All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And breaking news, I just came across this article. As you can see, it says here, breaking U.S. deploys F-35 and F-16 fighter jets to confront Iranian threat in Middle East. And you can just type this in Google, you'll get, different articles that come up too. Okay, you had one that was also published here on Reuters earlier today. U.S. to send additional jets, warship to Middle East. Okay, because things are starting to get hot. All right, and that's pretty much how the Lord, sets it up. Right, sometimes it gets super super hot, then he has to turn it down a little bit, and then turn it back up, and then turn it back down a little bit. But there's a reason for that. Okay, as the scriptures tell us in the book of Habakkuk, the second chapter, that though it tarry, wait for it. Okay, so let's read this real quick. It's not a long article. All right, it's just breaking news, but let's get into it. So it says U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has ordered the deployment of F-35 and F-16 fighter jets, along with the destroyer USS Thomas Hudner, to the Middle East in response to Iranian activities in the Strait of Hormuz. And now let's type that in here. Hormuz Strait. Let's get a quick map of that. Okay. So as you can see, if I can zoom in here a bit. All right. So as you can see here, you have the Persian Gulf, and then you have here the Strait of Hormuz right here, which is right south of Iran. So they have, they're very capable of either seeing or controlling what's going on over here. And this is where the U.S. is sending those fighter jets and that the so-called destroyer USS uh, Thomas Hudner over there. Okay, and they're saying that the reason is because, as we keep reading, it says the move comes after recent incidents where Iranian Navy ships attempted to seize merchant vessels in the region. The UN, but here's the thing now, though, right? Iran, Iran may not be as big as the United States. However, the U.S. is going to have to be very cautious. All right, dealing with Iran. See, right? This doesn't mean they're going to go start a war because they know better. They could, but they know that if they go in, if all right, say some altercation happens, if they continue it and let it escalate, they know that Russia is going to eventually have to get involved because Russia is allies with Iran, and not only that, but Iran, okay, and that also ties in China, okay, and a lot of these other Eastern nations. Remember, China not too long ago basically brokered peace between I believe it was Iran and Saudi Arabia, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, they Russia China started to be that glue, using financial ways and so on and so forth to sort of piece them back together. Okay, so the U.S. is losing allies quickly. All right, put it like that. The West is depreciating very quickly as the East is getting stronger and stronger. Not to mention the whole BRICS nation and everything, or BRICS nation, the whole BRICS alliance, and so on. Okay, so let's keep reading. It says the U.S. aims to defend its interests and safeguard freedom of navigation in the strategic waterway, which supplies more than one-fifth of the world's oil. The fighter jets are intended to provide cover for ships traveling in the region. Now, you know what's interesting, right? You take a look here at this location. You see how far this is the away from the U.S., right? And You didn't see France, you didn't see Germany, you didn't see Italy, you didn't see any of these countries jump in here. UK say, hey, the Iran is bugging out over there. We about to go over there and set things straight. But no, the US that come all the way from the West, all right, says we going to zoom in over here and come make sure that everything is looking right. Because they just gotta do it. Okay, they got to do it. But hey, the scriptures tell you that ultimately, when this war gets hot, they're gonna send the U.S. is gonna send a lot of their troops over here. Okay, into this region in Saudi Arabia. Okay, and I believe that's in Joel. I believe it's I think Joel the second chapter. Okay, somewhere in the middle, getting to the end. Okay, so these articles that come up that report on these kinds of situations, they're not just by coincidence. In the last few years, things have been escalating, shifting closer and closer um, to a world war. Not to mention Israel, which is constantly pushing the U.S. to back them so that they can go after Iran. And so at this point, it's only a matter of time. And we keep on telling you it's only a matter of time. All right. It says here the fighter jets are intended. Okay, read that. So U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has ordered F-35 and F-16 fighter jets deployed to the Middle East, as well as the destroyer USS Thomas Hudner, in response to Iranian activities in the Strait of Hormuz. In response to a number of recent alarming events in the Strait of Hormuz, the Secretary of Defense has ordered the deployment of the destroyer USS Thomas Hudner, F-35 fighters, and F-16 fighters to the U.S. Central Command Area of Responsibility to defend U.S. interests and safeguard freedom of navigation in the region. Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said Monday. So, what are the chances of an even more dangerous altercation breaking out? I mean, they just went up with the U.S. sending these jets over there. Now Iran could be like, all right, we're going to back up, or they could say, no, we're not going to back up. So we're so deep into prophecy that anything can happen. Now, like I said before, this doesn't mean that okay, the U.S. sends these fighter jets over there. Then next week, missiles of nuclear missiles are flying all over the world. World War III is popping off. No, there's still an order in which things have to happen. Although that doesn't mean that the Lord cannot turn things up over there in the Middle East. Because remember, he said that his determination is to gather the nations over there. So something is going to take place that's going to draw these nations in like a vortex. That's how typically world wars end up getting initiated. It's not like you usually like all you have two sides, right? Allies on each. It's not like they all just line up one day and say, "All right, we're gonna go to war full on, all the Eastern powers against the Western powers." No, it's typically one or two or three nations that get into something, but because they are allied to other nations that are bigger and have more dangerous weapons, those nations get drawn in. See, so if a world superpower on the Western side, okay, gets drawn into a war between two smaller nations, guess what? The allies on the eastern side are gonna have to join in there to defend their ally, and then the war expands and expands and expands, and then it becomes that vortex. It draws in the world powers, and next thing you know, you have a world war in your head. Let's keep reading. It says the development comes amid increasing Russian aggression in the skies over Syria. Now, this is very important because according to biblical prophecy, right, which we know that World War III is going to happen because it is prophesied in the Bible, but there are key names, key players that when they are, in the news like they are now, centered around these kinds of situations, you have to pay attention. You have to pay very close attention. And some of those are Russia, Iran, US, Israel, okay, Turkey, NATO, all of these, they're in there. So right now, these nations are involved in some way, shape, or form, in war, whether it's with Ukraine and Russia, okay? Which I just saw something earlier today. I think it said that the Ukrainian grain deal expired because Russia quit. They said they're not with it no more. Okay, it says the U.S. is considering military options to counter the situation without ceding any territory. Okay, oh, Slacky, let me actually read this again. The development comes amid increasing Russian aggression in the skies over Syria. Now, why is Russian aggression increasing, at least as they call it? Because that's in Ezekiel the 38th chapter. The Lord said, pursuant to Ezekiel 38 and 4, or verse 3, and say, thus saith the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, which this Gog or slash Magog here is referring to Russia. It says, and I will turn thee back, and we know that Gog and Magog were what's this guy, Japhites, right, descendants of Japheth. But remember that after the flood, when these families started to populate the earth, they actually named the lands where they dwelt after their names. Hence the land of Canaan, which became the land of Israel. Okay, and so on and so forth. So they named the lands where they dwelt after their names. And the land or the region that was known as as Magog or Gog, today the people that are living in that region are the modern day Russians. So that is why in Ezekiel 38, which is talking about in this time period, not in the past, but now, that is why, even though it says Gog, it's really talking about Russia. Okay. So it says, like, today you have a lot of Edomites that dwell in South Africa, but in the ancient times it wasn't so. See, so here it is. The Lord might be saying, like you may have, for example's sake, right? Say you have a prophet that was hundreds of years ago, before South Africa got heavily populated with Edomites, right? And this prophet was prophesying against South Africa, saying, whatever, the region of South Africa, the Mossad, because of all the wickedness you're doing over there, because you are the Lord's hated nation, he's going to bring destruction against you, right? But remember that this prophet is speaking about the future. See, so say now you go a couple hundred years into the future and you read that prophecy, you need to now be able to decipher that. Wait, hold on. The prophet wasn't referring to Hamites, although predominantly that is their land, the land of Ham. The prophet was referring to the modern day inhabitants of South Africa. Hence, he, according to the example I just gave, he refers to them as the Lord's hated, and we know that that's Esau. See, so it's a similar concept here in Ezekiel 38. But the point is, in verse 4, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army. So when it says that I will turn thee back, that is what the Lord is doing right now, which is why if you go back a couple of years, when, say, even Trump was in office, Russia wasn't on this level of aggression, as they call it, that they are now. See, but the Lord put Biden in there. He set up certain different events. He has the angels working on the minds of certain kings and rulers, and now Russia has been triggered to where they're being turned back into that warlike state. That's why everything is getting hot now. So it says here, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, of all of them handling swords, which in today, the modern day, would be their military, their armies, their missiles, their tanks, okay, their jets, drones, all of it. Now, notice that it starts to list names, right? Names of these different nations. You have Persia, which today are the modern day Iranians. It talks about what? Ethiopia and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah, or Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands and many people with thee. With who? With Russia. And then it tells you what? Be thou prepared and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company, which it just listed a few names here. It says that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. See, this is why the US can't just go up in there, even though they're sending these fighter jets. They can't just go up in there and do whatever they want, because Russia is a guard onto Iran, and not just Iran, but the other nations as well that are allied to Russia. However, Iran is one of those nations. So if the US or even Israel decides that they want to ultimately, they want to attack Iran or something like that, they are well aware that that is going to trigger Russia, and Russia is not a baby nation. They have some very dangerous weapons, and not just them, China as well, and these other nations. So it can get very ugly very quickly. But then again, that is why the Lord cools down these kinds of situations, because just like that, it can get very, very, wars. Look, it doesn't take much for a war to really start to break out. Some wars are started over something that may seem so small, but in an instant, somebody presses the button and it's over. So that's why the Lord has this thing cool down, because there's still other prophecies that need to take place before this war fully goes nuclear. So if the Lord just allows everything to just heat up, I mean, that might ruin the order of prophecy, and we can't have that now. So let's read a little bit more on here. It says here that Russia's intensified military activity in Syria, in collaboration with Iran and the Syrian government, is aimed at pressuring the U.S. to withdraw from the region. Tensions have escalated, and U.S. forces are closely monitoring Russian actions, including incidents like Russian warplanes targeting a U.S. surveillance drone and conducting joint training with Syrian militaries. So they ain't playing, all right? And there's going to come a day where you're going to hear it on your TV, or maybe you might get drafted into that war. But you're going to hear it on your TV, and they're going to officially announce it that NATO is at war with Russia or whatever, just for example's sake. And at that point, people are going to realize it's not a joke. Because the second they hear things like this, they want to jump on TikTok and start making funny clips about it. How I'm looking when they try to come and draft me for it. But it's not going to be a joke when you actually get forced. It says, in addition, the defense official told reporters the U.S. is considering a number of military options to address increasing Russian aggression in the skies over Syria, which complicated. First off, but you see, here's the thing. That's why the scriptures say that this man keepeth not at home. They're everywhere. They got their nasty, crusty ass toes in every part of the world, as if they're like the world police. Now hold up. We gotta come investigate, take a look over here. No. You said something ain't right in your country. No, you ain't gonna take care of it. We gonna come in there and we gonna make sure that it's all right. Even though we got shit going on in our country, we ain't gonna worry about that. We are interested in your land. Okay, we don't have jurisdiction there. Well, we do now. Like, that's the mindset that these proud ass devils move around the whole earth with. So it says, which complicated efforts to strike an Islamic State group leader last week. The official declined to detail the options, but said the U.S. will not cede any territory and will continue to fly in the western part of the country on anti-Islamic State missions. That's going to be interesting, because that's going to definitely open doors for clashes. The Russian military activity, which has increased in frequency and aggression since March, stems from growing cooperation and coordination between Moscow, Tehran, and the Syrian government to try to pressure the U.S. to leave Syria, the officials said. The official said Russia is beholden to Iran for its support in the war in Ukraine, and Tehran wants the U.S. out of Syria so it can more easily move lethal aid to Lebanese Hezbollah and threaten Israel. Ain't that interesting? The U.S. has seen more cooperation, collaboration, planning, and intelligence sharing, largely between mid-level Russian and Iranian Quds Force leaders in Syria to pressure the U.S. to remove troops from Syria, the official added. Okay, so things are cooking. All right, things are cooking. Iran has been engaging in a series of attacks on shipping vessels in the Gulf waters since 2019. This situation will likely spark concerns over increased tensions between Washington and Tehran. And like I said, they already know what their boundaries are. Okay, but if at this point in this day and age, you still don't see what's going on or what's getting ready to happen, then I mean, I don't know. This is the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 8. Now, actually, when you jump up, verse 3 and 1, it says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. So that's called balance, right? Everything has its time, place, purpose. So jumping down to verse 3, you have a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. So believe it or not, killing has its time and its season, just like healing does. And in verse 8, as it tells you, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. Because you can't have love all the time. It can't just be all love and it can't just be all hate. That's a false balance. And it can't just be all war and it can't just be all peace, at least not in this time. So what we are entering into or are already in is a time of war. And it's going to be the greatest war that the world has ever seen, because it's going to lead into the greatest peace that the world has ever seen. And that's that. So, anyway, I'm going to end it off here. I linked the first article here in the description box, so you can get access to that. But Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.